Testing, 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 testing.
I'm calling this meeting to order. My apologies for the board being late to the start time. We just come from closed session at which we took no reportable action. So as my mother would say, let's get this show on the road. All right, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't have any cards for public comment. Is that right? Okay, great. Thank you. Tonight is a study session. We have two topics. Our first topic is sustainability.
Yes, Madam President. So the overarching theme is sustainability and climate. And so we have two topics we want to present on tonight. One is about the board's sustainability plan, as well as our climate survey follow-up. So with that, I'm going to have turn this over to Vice Chancellor De La Rosa to lead us through the first part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chancellor Lambert. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Board of Trustees. This is a joint presentation between myself, our Executive Director of Facilities, Joel Cadiz, and of course, our Vice Chancellor of Technology and Innovation, Jory Hatzel. So to start off the presentation tonight, we'd like to start by saying that sustainability and how it is really tied to our strategic goals here at the district, and also aligning sustainability with all of the things that we are doing here. We'll start the presentation by looking at the framework that we have in front of you today. This is about the institutional stewardship framework, and in which I believe the Chancellor used this framework really to hone in on us that sustainability, governance, culture, and people are institutional enablers, eventually through facilities and energy, technology and data, the operations, mission and academics. It leads towards the learners, focus and centered towards our learners, our students, and community impact that really has student outcomes in mind and the success of our students. And this is basically our North Star in all the things that we do here at the district. So as you can see from this framework, sustainability is part of, is really a core tenet in terms of how we can achieve our mission and our North Star, because this is an important it is an important mechanism, not just for our environment, but also for our practices to ensure that we are addressing the needs of our students, not just on the environment, but also in the learning environment that they are in. Secondly, it ties to the Chancellor's strategic priorities that the Board of Trustees has adopted back in November 2025, wherein equity by design, learning innovation and liberal arts education, career pathways and economic opportunities, global citizenship and civic innovation, and of course, sustainability is a critical component of our digital transformation and AI readiness as well. So jumping to the next slide. Of all of these things, there are four critical components in order for us to achieve our sustainability goals, and that is by 2035, as the board adopted the sustainability plan back in the late 2010s or 2019, I believe. And so these are the four underlying technology, which we call the superpowers, which are cloud technology, Internet of Things, mobile technology, and artificial intelligence. Later today during this presentation, our team is going to show you some of the improvements that we have done and using all of these four things in order for us to really further our efforts in our sustainability. All right, and so with that, I'll pass it on to our Executive Director of Facilities and Operations, Joel Cadiz, to talk more about our Energy Master Plan and our Sustainability Action Plan.
Good evening. So let me give next slide, please. Let me just give a brief historic context of where the Energy Master Plan and Sustainability action plan, how it came to fruition. So with the passage of Measure G in March of 2020, that provided the district an important opportunity to advance and expand the sustainability initiatives. And as part of this effort, the Energy and Sustainability Advisory Committee was created to make recommendations to the Chancellor's Advisory Council on matters of sustainability. And in the fall of 2020, ESAC committee met, albeit informally. Spring of 2021, we hired our sustainability consultant, Matt Sullivan, and that's when the Energy and Sustainability Advisory Committee met at a more regular basis, bi-weekly, I believe. In 2021, excuse me, in November of 2021, the Energy Master Plan was presented to the board as the first read, and the following month in December, that Energy Master Plan was adopted. The ESAC committee continued to meet, and in 2020, December 2022, the Sustainability Action Plan incorporating the Energy Master Plan was completed and presented to the Board of Trustees for first reading and eventually adopted in January of 2023. Now, both the Sustainability Action Plan and the Energy Master Plan, these were templates that were from the Chancellor's Office, and this template was developed through the Chancellor's Office, Citrus College, and the California Energy Commission, and the consultant of Newcomb Anderson and McCormick. Next slide, please. So tonight we have ERM Sustainability and Advisory Services. They are the world's leading sustainability consultancy, helping their clients achieve their sustainability goals. Tonight we have Joel Martin and Naomi Davey, who will be presenting our Energy Master Plan Sustainability Action Plan, as they help us to develop a path for us to move forward and achieve some of our goals that we have defined at the Sustainability Action Plan and Energy Master Plan.
Thank you, Joel. You can move to the next slide. This is kind of an overview of the topics we're going to cover here. We're going to first touch on some peer benchmarking that we did as the first part of our engagement.
Do you mind using the mic
Oh,
so the people
sorry.
online can hear you?
Yeah,
Thank you.
you. This is just an overview of some of the subjects we're going to talk about. The peer benchmarking looks at how Foothill-De relates to some of the peers, and we're going to go through a baseline of emissions and water usage and some energy usage, and then we'll get into kind of the meat of it, the recommendations and costing for taking some of those actions. So you can move to the next slide. Thanks. So this, as I said, in the initial part of our engagement, we looked here at basically how does Foothill-De target and ambition disclosure relate to their peers in the area. And the main purpose of showing this in this fashion is to show that it's a relatively similar ambition to most peers, not significantly ahead of or behind, drastically behind any peers. The green column, it's kind of hard to see here, but the green squares, at least in the first column on the left, represent that Foothill-De is among the leaders in their greenhouse gas reduction target disclosure. And then on the far right, you'll see that none of the peers have disclosed under the STARS reporting system framework yet. So again, don't need to spend a lot of time here, just the message that it's kind of, you know, Foothill-De on par with peers in terms of this space. So you can move to the next slide. And you can continue one more. Thanks.
Great. So I'll be talking through a few technical terms here. So I wanted to provide a primer for everyone on what we'll be discussing in the next few slides on recommendations and costs for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll be referring to Scope 1 emissions and Scope 2 emissions. You can think of Scope 1 emissions as any emissions that are directly caused by the district. That could be through owned facilities and vehicles and refrigerants that are leaking from facilities. Whereas Scope 2 are indirect emissions from energy that's being purchased from the electricity grid, but isn't actually being generated by the district itself. So when I say Scope 2, think of fuels, think of everything that you own. When I say Scope 1, think of the fuels and everything that you own, anything that's being combusted on campus. and then scope 2 as electricity generally. So you can go to the next slide. So wanted to present an overview of the baseline so you can understand where the district is today and what the targets are for the future. So in the greenhouse gas emissions category, as I spoke about just now with the scope 1 and scope 2, you can see there more scope 1 than scope 2 emissions. And so we'll talk about how to reduce both of those. The target for reducing emissions is a 75% reduction by 2030, 100% reduction by 2035, and getting to zero natural gas by 2035, as well as a 100% renewable energy procurement. Overall, just want to think about this in the context of the Board of Governors targets that sort of provide the foundation for this. So there are 3 categories here: the GHG emissions category, green buildings, and water. For green buildings, there are some targets here related to how buildings are operated according to LEED standards, and then water that has to do with how you're using water and reusing water. And so for the recommendations and costing, this will be sort of the foundation for how you're going to get there. Next slide, please. So going through the scope 1 and 2 emissions baseline, we calculated these emissions using data that we collected from you all, so utility bills, your fleet. I think overall the takeaway here is that better data is going to be needed in order to make progress here. So we need to better understand exactly where your emissions are coming from, but this is sort of a preliminary view of the campus right now. So you can see in red there is the natural gas, green is electricity. Just about, half and half of the emissions are coming from those 2 sources alone. But there are also refrigerants and the campus fleet as well. So when I talk about the recommendations and costing, we'll really be focusing on the natural gas and electricity, but just know that there are other emission sources. And then the table, you can see sort of that breakdown by campus. Of course, Foothill and De Anza sort of neck and neck there, with De Anza having a higher emissions profile. And then we've also included Sunnyvale. The thing to call out here is Sunnyvale is operating on 100% renewable electricity right now. So those emissions are very small. That's sort of something that we want to carry forward as an example for a recommendation for other buildings on campus.
And in terms of the water usage, it's a similar picture here to the other greenhouse gas emissions picture, but here we're looking at the combined water usage in this chart, and you can see the bulk of the usage is coming from the cooling towers. So that's going to be an area of focus for water reduction, and there's some significant opportunities there for reducing water usage. But there are other significant water users as well. So, and opportunities for reduction in things like irrigation, which you can see is a significant portion. So it's not that we need to discard the others. And I also mentioned again, the targets that we have here set are for 50% potable water consumption reduction from the baseline level in 2035. And in addition to that, it's limiting stormwater runoff and discharge to pre-development levels for a variety of characteristics. So again, kind of just an overview. We don't need to get into a lot of details here, but just an overview of the water usage for the 2 campuses. And you can move to the next slide, please. I'll hand it back to Joel.
So why is smart metering important for accuracy? So the data that Naomi and Joel and team presented were based on our yearly utility bills. And really the data that we need, although it's comprehensive, we need to look at it from a more granular standpoint. Like every building are different. So all buildings function very significantly with occupant and population. So sub-metering is essential because that level of that level allows us to focus on the buildings with the greatest opportunity of impact. So that's why sub-metering is very important to us. Yes.
Yeah, so now we'll kind of get into some of the details about what we looked at in terms of recommendations for for reducing some of these usage and emissions. So for this first slide here, this one's got a lot of information, and so we'll spend a little time here describing what we looked at. So we've identified many potential opportunities, and we've broken those out into kind of types of initiative, which is what you're seeing in the colored buckets here. And so each one of those we'll cover in subsequent slides in a little bit more detail, with kind of looking at some of those individual opportunities and how feasible and implementable those might be. Underneath each column here, you'll see the total cost that we've assessed for each of these. You'll notice there's some pretty wide ranges there. And again, to Naomi's point earlier, that gets back to the data that we have available, and improving that data will go a long way towards narrowing some of those ranges, and getting greater clarity on some of those estimates. You'll see that the largest costs here are under the right-hand side, the emissions and buildings. So I think Naomi's going to speak to those later about what some of those might look like, and what some of those costs, how those might be incurred. But you also note at the bottom that there's been a previous report done back in 2024, and that one looked at a little bit different scale of implementation, not just decarbonization, but a few other infrastructure improvements as well. And so the total cost that was done, that was provided in that assessment, was around about $500 million. So that's more than what we've shown here in our limited decarbonization opportunities, but it's on sort of the same order of magnitude of what we're looking at. So I think you can go to the next slide here. Right, so this one is the data improvements section. So here what we looked at was those opportunities, and we kind of assessed them with detailed, I wouldn't say detailed cost estimates. What we've done here is shown them in a summarized manner to see kind of red, green, yellow stoplight method of assessing which ones of these are smart and easy to implement, which is the green. See at the bottom, building management systems. That one is attractive because it's a low cost and a high impact. So it's easy to do, and a low hanging fruit, so to speak. Energy and water meters are also, they might be a large cost, but they're pretty necessary in terms of implementing some of these other solutions that we have later on. So I think those are an important one to draw attention to. Vehicle telematics, that's a small cost, but it's also a small portion of the emissions. So it's important to kind of monitor those things, but it's lower impact than some of the ones at the bottom there. So you can move to the next slide as well. In terms of water, we've quantified some of the reductions that you might expect to see from some of these measures here. Again, drawing attention to meters, which is that top line, monitoring and targeting. So meters and monitoring are going to be important to help track down some of these water losses that we're seeing in the estimates. So in meters themselves, we've seen historically that when you add meters to water usage, the usage actually comes down on its own, just from having eyes on those numbers. And there's also some unaccounted for water usage in the data that we have. So meters and monitoring, again, will help identify those and eliminate those. Cooling towers, as I mentioned before, are a large water user on campus. So there's a couple different measures that you can look at for reducing the water use there. The cooling tower optimization one, which you'll see in the middle there in green, is relatively easy to implement. It doesn't involve any significant capital investments. It's kind of a operational process improvement. There may be restrictions on adding some dissolved solids in the water to increase that technical details here, but essentially it's not something that involves a huge upfront cost. The other one, the larger percentage there at the bottom, the air-cooled chillers conversion, that's a major potential opportunity, but it kind of involves some trade-offs. There's higher energy usage associated with switching from water chillers to air chillers, but it does allow you to reduce your energy consumption, or you reduce your water consumption significantly. So we looked at all these things, and as I said, we did some high-level estimates and came up with some costs, and so those are represented again in our red, yellow, green system there, assessment on the right-hand side. I think you can move to the next slide.
Great. So I'll talk through the greenhouse gas emissions and energy recommendations. Thinking back to a couple slides ago, we talked about how natural gas and electricity are going to be sort of the big hitters here. So we don't have impact, but directing you to the top line here, there's a natural gas target of 100% reduction by 2035. So some of the costs here are high, but that impact is really going to go a long way in reducing your emissions. And then at the bottom there in the scope 2, the dark gray, that is renewable electricity solution. So purchasing renewable electricity from the grid and running on 100% renewable electricity by 2035 is going to be necessary to meet your overall target. So those are the big two here. You can see that the natural gas target is split into two different recommendations. One is complete electrification of your heating system. So instead of relying on natural gas to heat your water, to heat the air, you would be using electric systems like heat pumps. You'll see that's a pretty large undertaking. And so the feasibility of doing that, by 2035 is a lot lower than some of the other options. But again, it's really, if the funding is there for those kinds of projects, the impact is incredibly high. There's a second way to reduce your natural gas usage, which is using renewable natural gas. And so California is a really great market for renewable natural gas. We've included it on here. And the costs are really driven by taking a 50-50 approach. So electrifying 50% of your campus by 2035 and using renewable natural gas for the rest of your heating needs. And doing that would be a lot more feasible than a complete electrification of the full campus. But again, that's really dependent on sort of funding and the capital replacement structure and all of that. So the moderate cost from renewable natural gas purely comes from the fact that you really don't have to change any of your infrastructure in order to use renewable natural gas. With electric heating, you're going to have to rip out a lot of your infrastructure and your systems. With renewable natural gas, you can sort of have that as a drop-in replacement and not have any physical construction there. So there's a moderate cost. It does increase your operational costs, as we've seen renewable natural gas will add a premium to what you're paying for natural gas. But the feasibility is really high because of what I spoke about, which is that the operational impacts are pretty low. The next target is a transportation target. So this was a very small piece of the pie when we looked at your baseline, but there is a target to get to 100% electric vehicles by 2035. When looking at your current vehicle inventory, you have about 170 vehicles. About 50 or so are already electric. So there's been great progress toward that goal. But sort of getting over the line there is going to require an investment, potentially replacing vehicles before their natural end of life. But of course, to keep costs down, you'll sort of want to go with the normal replacement cycle of your vehicles. There's also a secondary target under transportation, which is to reduce your mileage. So in addition to actually just replacing the vehicles with electric models, trying to optimize so that you don't need as many vehicles or you don't need to drive as much is going to contribute to that emissions reduction target. Next, we have refrigerants. There's no specific target for this for many institutions. This is a very small part of the puzzle here, but there are ways to reduce emissions by reducing how refrigerants are leaking out of your systems. There may also be the option to just drop in and replace one refrigerant with a lower emissions alternative, but typically what we see is you're going to have to either renovate or retrofit your existing equipment to accommodate those new refrigerants. Energy efficiency, this has a specific target linked to it. You'll see that the cost is large and the feasibility is low. But again, if this can be achieved, it really does, have a large impact. What I would say is if you're going to electrify your campus, reaching this target becomes increasingly difficult. If you're adding EV charging, for example, you're using more energy than you would have before. And so getting down to a 40% reduction in your energy intensity, even as campus grows, by 2035 is going to be a really large undertaking that's going to require lots of funding. But there are some low-hanging fruit ways to do this. One is simply, turning off lights or installing automatic lighting controls or finding where there's, ghost power or wasted energy. That's only going to get you part of the way there, but that's, something that we'd recommend as a first step in any sort of decarbonization ambition, is making sure that you're optimizing your energy as much as possible. Beyond the low-hanging fruit, this would require retrofitting your equipment, fixing equipment so that it's more efficient, and those kinds of projects. And then finally, there's the renewable electricity target. So this is a 75% target by 2030, 100% by 2045, although because you have a zero emissions target by 2035, this is going to have to be 100% by 2035. So the way to get there is you can look at Sunnyvale's campus as a model, purchasing 100% renewable energy. And part of the reason that the cost is small here and the feasibility is really high is that in order to get electricity in your buildings, you don't really need to change anything about them. It's really changing where you're purchasing your energy from. So changing your contracts with your energy suppliers to make sure that you're getting 100% renewable energy product. There's also continuing to expand your reliance on solar. So there are solar installations already on campuses, but expanding that would definitely contribute to getting to 100% renewable by 2035. So in terms of the order of operations here, of course, starting with the smaller cost, the highest feasibility, and then moving toward, if you want to have that 100% reduction in emissions target, going toward those higher cost and lower feasibility items, and really planning for that kind of change in campus. And I think we can go to the next slide. So what I've just showed is, line by line, what these projects are going to look like. On this page, you can see in the graphic what your emissions would look like over time if you adopted everything. Of course, that might not be feasible, but getting an idea of how your scope 2 emissions related to electricity would go down, because that's sort of one of the easier things to do, the lower hanging fruit. You could get that done, within 2 to 3 years, and then deal with the harder to achieve scope 1 emissions abatement. And so by 2035, getting down to zero or near zero emissions would really be the target here. And that phasing is going to be important for reducing costs and reducing physical disruption to the campus, disruption to student life. So this is just something to consider as you are looking through these different options here. And that's it. I guess we can take questions.
So at this time, we'd like to highlight some SRG projects, and we'll start with our project manager, Michael Hole, and also follow that with Josh Atkinson, who's also a project manager, will be discussing EV chargers. And then we'll round it off with a small demonstration of our BMS system.
Good evening. I don't know if you guys remember when I came to the board in August asking for approval of the design build contract, but here's an update of where we stand. I know we covered the basics at that meeting where we talked about how this project is going to electrify heating for the pool PE complex. It's going to provide over 700 tons of cooling. The great part about that is that as we heat the pool year round, we're going to be able to harvest the waste cooling and be able to cool IT closets and different spaces around the campus year round. So it creates better efficiencies. But the most important thing that this project accomplishes outside of this new smaller plant is it lowers the temperature of our heating hot water loop. Currently, natural gas gets us to 180 degrees. All of our equipment around campus is sized for that. We're going to be going down to 130, which allows us to have flexibility when it comes to selecting electrified heating equipment. There's nothing on the market right now other than a plant in Europe that is providing natural gas, providing heat pump at 180 degrees, and they're using propane as their refrigerant, which would not be allowed in California. Bottom line, this gets us ready. This is the first step towards Foothill campus electrification. It provides the heating and cooling for the PE complex. It provides waste cooling to the campus. It lowers the temperature of the campus loop so that when funding is available for a new plant to replace our 17 boilers on campus, we are already ready to do that. It's just a matter of plug and play, funding, designing, and building that new central plant.
Hi, everyone. So on the topic of EV chargers, this chart displays current planned and ongoing charger construction at the sites specified off to the left. So currently there are 48 chargers undergoing construction across both campuses to add to the existing chargers on both sites. There are also some planned. There are 22 planned for summer 2027 and also an indefinite timeline. These projects will culminate in a total of 96 chargers split into 42 across both campuses, as well as 12 at the district office. Go to the next slide, please. This chart, meanwhile, breaks down the district's electric vehicles. So it gives a categorical breakdown of vehicles by type and then specifies those of which we have successfully electrified thus far, or by proportion. Excluding carts, which we have mostly overhauled with electric carts, we have 13 electric vehicles out of a total of 75, which totals 17%. As Naomi mentioned earlier, we're aiming for 100% by 2035 and 50% in newly acquired and rolling stock by 2030. So we've got a ways to go to catch up with those targets and stay aligned with our sustainability action plan.
Now we're going to do a demo, not demolition, a demo of our building management system. And Eddie Magana, who is our maintenance supervisor, and Joel Cortez, who are our facilities director, will be doing this demo. And it'll be through our iPad. So tonight's demonstration really embodies the four superpowers of the BMS, which are cloud technology, Internet of Things, mobile technology, and of course AI. And the iPads being passed will help you look at that. So the iPad being passed actually is your digital twin. And Bob Cormia, who is, I would call my mentor, gave me a really good definition of the digital twin. And what it is a dynamic and virtual model of real world system. It continuously receives data from actual building through sensors, meters, and control systems. And how that helps us in facilities is that this digital model reflects how the building is performing in real time and allows us to monitor the conditions and analyze trends and to predict potential issues and optimize operations. So we are approaching this proactively rather than reactively. So now I'll let Joel and Eddie do the
Good evening, board members. Tonight, I'm pleased to provide a brief demonstration of the building management system modernization project using ALC web control. The system significantly strengthens our ability to monitor, protect, and optimize district infrastructure across all campuses. Some of the key features you'll see, it's web-based monitoring and controls. It's a centralized secure platform providing real-time visibility across multiple buildings and campuses. Some of the equipment you'll see is it's monitoring is chillers, boiler plants, air handlers, rooftop units, electrical distribution, main switchboards, distribution panels, transformers, emergency generators, and automatic transfer switches. Lighting control panels, smart utility monitoring, domestic water meters, and natural gas meters. This system is has mobile access, so our technicians will be able to respond to a building and look at the entire system holistically and be able to identify a problem rather than physically walk into going up to the roof, going to the air handler. We are going to go over D120, our ETS building that we recently renovated. So our HVAC equipment is fully integrated into the system. Our electrical distribution, lighting control panels, and smart metering are still being scheduled, so that's forthcoming. One of the good features of web control is it has the ability to establish critical alarms for chillers, for generators, for transfer switches. So in the event of a power outage, the system will send critical alarms to supervisors, to technicians, so we'll be able to respond immediately after a critical alarm. There is a AI component to web control. So there is a fault detection and diagnostic aspect of web control. It pinpoints equipment faults in HVAC devices such as temperature sensors to flag potential issues before an actual alarm condition occurs. So this gets us from reactive maintenance to predictive maintenance. It also has an AI-powered predictive insights, which integrates data collected from the campus into an AI platform that helps analyze all of the information and identifies performance issues, helps prioritize based on impact, and provides next steps for resolution. Another feature is energy dashboards. It has real-time energy visibility, identifies abnormal spikes, monitors current demand and consumption, and also has historical trending and benchmarking. It compares day to day, month to month, and year to year. So you'll be able to see gauge the performance of the system. It does support the decarbonization and sustainability goals. Current projects that include ALC scope is, as mentioned, D120 ETS building, the HVAC upgrade, the Foothill decarbonization that Mike was talking about, the transformer replacement project, the Dianza PE modernization project, and Sunnyvale HVAC upgrade. There's two projects that facilities currently doing scope development on, and that is to integrate our solar arrays here at Foothill into ALC web control. So we'll be able to monitor the power production of the arrays, and should we get a fault, it will send off a critical alarm so that we can respond and hopefully get it up and running. Another project that facilities is doing scope development on is the district office. So this building, it is a newer building, so most of the devices are up to date. So it should be easier for us to integrate into web control. So that's also coming down the pipeline. So with that said, I'll let Mr. Eddie Magaña, our maintenance supervisor, walk you through the login for web control. So you're able to have a user experience on this new system.
So if you're able to log in, it'll bring you to this home screen, and then there's two ways of getting to it and start logging in. You could either hover around the building, which the only building that we currently have online is D120, or you could go to the tree here on the left and get to it as well. And then it'll bring you to this home page, which is the ETS building. And then if you look at the scale here, it will show what the green means. Green is your ideal temperature. And then as you go away from those set points, it goes to the yellow, the light blue, and then eventually the reds, which aren't good, and it would indicate an alarm. So you could hover over a current zone. We'll click into VAV 21, which happens to be the director's office. It'll give you an overview of what the zone temperature is there currently, and then what the VAV is doing as well. You could see that the heating hot water valve is at 0. You could see your discharge air temperatures, and then as well as your air temperatures going into the building.
So this is a great tool for our technicians to, when they do get a hot and cold call, they'll be able to see the health of a VAV, supply air going into the room. Is it hot? Is it cold? Then they'll just doing a visual, they'll be able to see if the valves are opening completely. In this case, the heating valve is at 0%. So if the room is cold and you need heat, then you can zero in into that valve. You can go a step back. Based on what you see here, you can also go to the boiler plant or the chiller plant. If the supply air is not tempered enough, then you can take a look and see what that is doing.
So like Joel mentioned, the technician will get a work order saying the zone is cold or hot, and then they could do a quick overview of it before actually going to the location prior to figure out if they're going to go to the building or if they're going to go to the air handler to start their troubleshooting process. Another thing that you could go on here, and then you could look at the trends of the building or of that VAV to see what it has been doing historically. So we'll go to the VAV, and then we'll go to the flows, and there you could see what that VAV was flowing at any given day or time.
So this also gives us the ability, if we do have power interruption at the middle of the night, if the unit is running, we can go back and it can make sense of the airflow, generator, or transfer switch. So it all is tied up to building automation. So makes it easier.
You go to the chill water system, and then you can look at what the chiller is doing as far as cooling and heating, as far as cooling, and then as well as the heating system.
This building is still in construction, so maintenance is going out and validating all the points. As mentioned earlier, the HVAC equipment is fully integrated. The lighting control panel, the electrical monitoring is still not integrated. We're scheduling that with the contractor. So as soon as that is complete, we'll be able to see power going to the building, power consumption, load. You'll be able to see domestic water usage, natural gas. In this case, that building does not have natural gas, but it's going to be a standard for all the buildings. So we'll be able to track all that information and provide it to the energy and sustainability manager to ensure that our initiatives are being effective or not.
I'm just going to go back to a trend so you guys could take a look at it and see the sort of data that could be captured historically and current readings. Again, you could go back to as far as the system's been in place online and see what it's been doing and when. Again, like Joel mentioned, you could pull this data for electrical meters, water meters, anything that's being tracked. You could look at the trend and pull that information.
All this information can be exported into Excel and then submitted to other applications for easier processing. So it is something that is available. Additionally, as mentioned, critical alarms can be implemented in our chiller plants and our boiler plants. The generator kicks on means we lost power, so then we'll get notified immediately, be able to respond and hopefully recover sooner.
It does have a scheduling feature. So if buildings aren't being used at certain days, you could go in there and you could turn the ventilation off. And then eventually, hopefully the lighting as well off of one controller.
So lighting control panel, you can layer the schedule and the occupancy sensors of a building. So even though it's scheduled to be on, if it does not detect motion, then it turns the lighting off. So it's one of the features, one of the ways that it saves energy for the campus.
And it does have a reporting function where you can set up reports, whether it's water consumption, electricity consumption, and you can get those emailed to certain groups of individuals on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, whatever is needed.
Any questions from anyone at the moment?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We'll collect the tablets afterwards.
Do you have more presentation or should I?
We do.
Okay, keep going.
Presentation, right? All right, thank you for that. And thank you. So at this stage of the presentation, all of the things that you saw on the iPad and on screen is really very important tools for us, not just on gathering data and analyzing data to look at trends, but also in responding to operational activities and making sure that we have less disruption in our classrooms and in our various learning environments. So investing in the infrastructure is really a critical component on making all of this online. So you were using an iPad, it's sitting on the cloud. So all of these things that we mentioned using the 4 superpowers are really embedded in this technology that we are adopting. And so all of this couldn't happen without technology in place. And so with this is a good segue for our Vice Chancellor of Technology and Innovation to continue the presentation.
Thank you. And I don't know why the technology glitches always happen right before we talk about technology. But that's the way it goes. At least you made it through a live demo without any problems. Yeah, so if you could go to the next slide. As Vice Chancellor De La Rosa was mentioning, All of these capabilities run through our infrastructure, IIT infrastructure, and specifically our college networks. And so one of the things that we see in relation to sustainability efforts, but also just generally as more and more devices enter the world and we wear more and bring more with us, sensors, all of these things are network connected. And it's important that we understand the infrastructure that's required to support that. Some of you may remember in June 2024, we did a presentation, or I came and did a presentation on very similar to this on the IT infrastructure needs. And at the time we talked about that was important, but there were some other immediate priorities. So I'm hopeful in this conversation, this will help refresh some memories and maybe bring some additional new perspective for our new board members. It's also critical, I won't read all of the bullets on the slides, but our college network supports instruction, supports student services, supports back-end operations as was shared here. And it's not just computing, right? It's our fire alarms, our building management systems, our heating and air, everything is connected now through those 4 superpowers that were mentioned before. I apologize for my voice. I'm just like at the tail end of getting over a cold that I had. So additionally, I want to talk a little bit about emergency preparedness and connectivity, because that's also a factor. And then just, service interruption. We expect these things to work all the time. We don't like it when they don't work. And so how our team works and some of the constraints we're under to make sure we don't have interruptions in service. So if you could go to the next slide, please. There we go. So just a little bit of context. Across the district, we have 183 what we've actually called network closets, right? Those are technically called IDF rooms. Many were actually converted from closets or other spaces that were created before the modern networking era. And so what we see, and you've seen a few of these pictures before and some new ones, are spaces that in many cases have inadequate cooling or environmental sealing. Some of them actually have no cooling at all, which is challenging and potentially degrades the lifespan of the equipment that we're running. And so I had to laugh a little bit earlier, Michael, when you mentioned, you could use that coolant to cool the IT closets. I'm like, for the ones that have cooling, yes. And so I want to be sensitive to that. We do have some dollars in Measure G to modernize those rooms, but we don't really have enough to cover the 183 in the current allocation. We're also looking at all this connectivity from things that run underground to things that go through the air. When you talk about the connectivity and what runs through a building, we also have a lot of buildings that have aging copper wiring inside of them. And so as more modern applications of IT, artificial intelligence, these things take more power, but they also typically take a higher bandwidth. And the older, like for example, category 5 copper wiring is just slower and kind of limiting for some of the work. And that impacts instruction, impacts services, impacts all of our operations. Additionally, and I think I have a little more context on this coming up, but we have conduits and conduits that run underground across all of our campuses. And those are very old and they often leak. They have remnants of eras past where things were not pulled out, but new cables were added. And so there's a lot of work that needs to happen with our underground utilities in terms of the telecom, including some upgrades to the fiber that runs through our campuses. So the fiber is our fastest connectivity, but even fiber has evolved from what we call multi-mode to single mode, right? And turns out the single mode is faster than the multi-mode because you're only going one direction with it. So if we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of reliability and resilience, again, some of these things that I've already hit on, we really need to focus on modernizing those IDF rooms, not just cooling and environmental controls. We also get critters and rodents. I've had staff bit by spiders that were poisonous. They just need to be sealed. And so looking at that as a critical component, particularly from a safety perspective. And then this last bullet on here, I just want to highlight We have the potential to increase our speed typically for most locations about 10x from what it is. So by enabling some of these upgrades to our fiber and cabling infrastructure, we could hit a 10 gigabit per second speed, which just helps with all of the AI processing or any large files or high bandwidth uses of the network. You can also see in the image, sorry if you go back for 1 second. So I was talking about Cat5 wiring. The modern implementations are Cat7 or above. So we're, from a standards perspective, we have some modernization to do. Go ahead, please. And then in addition to that, we're working on a couple of projects. One you may recall is a partnership with the city of the town of Los Altos Hills, where we're partnering to create an alternate geographically diverse internet pathway for the Foothill campus. That means if somebody cut through one of the cabling, which has happened before actually, that we would have a diverse, it's on a different strand of cable in a different place, right? And so we stay up on that backup. That's progressing. We're also looking at De Anza College, creating a true diverse backup for De Anza as well. Right now, those are both on the same AT&T bundle. So if cut through one cable, you cut the primary and the backup, which we don't want to have happen. So we're looking at that. Could use some resources to support that. And then I do want to highlight the state of some of our vaults, these in-ground vaults, manholes, and what we call the telecom pole boxes. We need to invest in some of that infrastructure. We have, for example, and I think I highlighted this in 2024, we have some vaults that are not labeled high voltage, but that have high voltage wiring running through them, which is clearly a big safety risk. And so we often rely on our staff to sort of know, right, where those hazards may be. And again, ETS didn't put the power in there, but we have to access those spaces. And typically we're working with low voltage stuff. Additionally, we just want to make sure that the physical space that we need in the areas where we have networking equipment, which would typically be those networking closets or IDF rooms. Initially, we were putting, IT switches and routers in those spaces. But now we're also putting electronic door lock equipment. We're putting building BMS equipment in those spaces. The number of sensors and things that are growing some of these spaces are very small. Some of them are rooms with an actual door that you can walk into. So just to indicate that behind the scenes, there's also a expansion of the number and type of equipment that has to go in these spaces, right? And it's all pretty mission critical, whether it's IT or for facilities. And I just want to say for the record, we love our facilities colleagues. I'm really, thank you to Joel and to his team, because when I got here, I think we weren't working with quite as much synergy as we are today. And that's, I think, been a benefit to everybody. Next slide. This is one, and I mentioned emergency communications. So there are a couple of things that go into that. One is uninterruptible power supplies, upgrading those. They do have a lifespan, so they wear out. Battery backup in our EOC areas as well, our emergency operations centers. But one of the things that I want to mention, Peter Taipi, who's here, he's our director of IT infrastructure, has been looking at a plan and some models and benchmarking with some other organizations around a distributed antenna system. And what that would do is that would allow us to basically level out or equalize the cellular signal across our campuses outside and inside some of the buildings. And in particular, this campus with the topography, there are definitely, I should ask President Whalen, but there are definitely some dead spots for some of the cellular providers. So we're looking at, how to potentially have stronger multi-carrier signals across the campuses. De Anza has its spots too, so we'll share the love there with the antenna system. But that's important not only for our cell phones, but a lot of these devices actually use a cellular signal, right? If they don't use Wi-Fi. So some of your For example, your sprinkler monitors and things, right? We live in this era now where there are sensors and an increasing number of sensors. So having blanket cell coverage is important and something we need to be mindful of as we're going forward. And that would additionally help with public safety communications. So what the investment looks like, and in 2024, when I was here, we were asking for about $10 million to be able to address some of these. We're roughly in the same neighborhood when you look at the current funding that we're using in Measure G, but we can only kick that can down the road so long. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm on the record, with you. And here to answer any questions that you might have about the components of this plan, and would ask for support, particularly since we're seeing more and more demands on our IT infrastructure from a facilities and sustainability standpoint. I think that's back to Vice Chancellor De La Rosa.
Well, thank you. So on the facilities side, what you see on this screen is more of the estimate that we came up with in terms of how much it would take for us to put sub-meterings in all of our utility items. And so it's about $21 million that is listed here on screen. And this is just to capture the phase one that we have talked about earlier, preparing ourselves for a better sustainability, to make sure that we have all the data points that we need in preparation for achieving our sustainability goals by 2035. All right. And then jumping on to the next slide here. So just a recap, a reminder, or not a reminder, but just a recap of the board action taken back in May 6, 2024. And this is all good for me because this was before my time. So it really helps me to understand the context.
I remember.
Oh, you did. We're in the board, when the board reallocated $75 million from the De Anza Event Center project, there was an understanding that the board reserves the right to reallocate a portion of that $200 million that is earmarked for housing, whatever is left for housing, and it deems such reallocation is necessary, particularly to address the infrastructure needs both at Foothill and at the Anza colleges campuses. And so as a final slide, I think this is our final slide. Oh, then second to the last slide. So what is the bottom line? So this is the infrastructure that we need really to support the student success. Student success depends on an environment conducive to learning. Fewer class disruptions leads to higher student persistence, equitable access to digital learning tools, stronger indoor connectivity supports today's learners. As you know, when our students come to class or come to the campus, they don't bring an iPad alone. They also have a laptop. They also have a cell phone. So they bring a lot of mobile devices with them, and we need to have an infrastructure that really supports that. It also implies safety and continuity are prerequisites for success. Also on the facility side, comfort and plus indoor environmental quality supports academic performance. Smarter buildings reduce downtimes and speedier response, as Joel and as Edgar has mentioned earlier during the demo, because now we will have the tools for us to really determine specifically where the pain points are so that we can go there instead of running around the campus to figure out what the issue is. Data-driven operations keep our learning spaces available. Student-serving facilities become more dependable over time, and protecting budgets protect student supports as well, because we're going to be smarter in terms of where we can devote our resources. Thereby, we can devote more resources that we save from those geared towards direct student support and or instruction. So overall, it really addresses 3 goals with 1 action: sustainability, operational enhancements, and potential program development. As you saw earlier, like the digital twin, that is a prelude in terms of how we can convert this environment into a living learning lab, wherein we can develop programs. Of course, that's the purview of faculty, but we have the infrastructure if we want to go there, right? And all of these leads to student success. And again, we just being true to our word, data-informed actions to achieve our goals. So we want to use data We want to use data. We want to mine our data. We want to analyze the data in order for us to have concrete actions to address all of our goals in a more strategic approach. Thank you. That's a lot.
That's it? I'll
Yes.
wait for the cell phone to go off. Okay, well, this is a study session, so I assume there's a few questions. Ms. Olson, I have one comment card here. Are there any others? Alrighty. Robert Cormier, are you still online?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
No problem. We can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. This question actually goes to Chancellor Lee Lambert. I just want to comment on how impressive the presentation was from everyone involved. Joel Cadiz, Joel Cortez, Josh Atkinson, our Chancellor of IT, Eddie Magana. And it's an amazing array of digital tools, sensors, software, dashboards, analytics. And I like the Chancellor's reaction to this on how all of this fits in to really a stated goal of the digital transformation of the Foothill-De College District.
Well, thank you, Bob, for that question. And what you're really seeing here is how climate tech meets digital transformation, and how we can use the four superpowers with AI to really enhance our physical plant, but also get to our climate sustainability goals. But more importantly, this opens up the opportunity, as was alluded to create new programs of study for our students and how to manage buildings, how to really drive sustainability practices, how to integrate solar and other renewable energies into a smart facility type of infrastructure. So I think the potential is huge here if we can bring it all together in an integrated, connected way. Hopefully that helps, Bob.
Thanks, that was perfect. And again, an amazing presentation. Thanks to everyone involved in this effort.
Thank you. Okay, board members. Trustee Gavatua, can I start with you?
I'm going to need a moment to digest a little bit and ponder what exactly I want to ask. So with your indulgence, I'll wait.
All righty. Trustee Chang.
Bob Cormier, thanks for being online. Everybody else here too. I also was impressed by the multiple presenters today because I think it definitely shows us how how many pieces are really playing into ultimate solutions. It's not, as you all have presented, going to be something that will happen quickly, but I think that studying it, understanding the, again, multiple pieces, we can be more intentional and we can be smarter in how we use the dollars. Just a couple of questions, just to kind of give me some further background. The consultant firm ERM, I appreciated your presentations today. Tell me a little bit about ERM, if you would, and a little bit about yourselves. And are you staying involved with us, or what's next with you? And then I'll come back with a couple other questions.
Sure. ERM is, as Joel mentioned, we like to say the largest pure play sustainability consulting firm. That means we don't do financial consulting or business consulting. Everything we do is related to sustainability one way or the other. We're a global company, over 5,000 employees. We have offices all over the world, but we do lots of different things. In this engagement, we've been brought in to kind of do this assessment of the campus facilities and do the baseline. As you saw, we presented with the baseline greenhouse gas emissions inventory and the water consumption. So as to our future involvement, that comes down to Joel and our relationship there, and how he envisions using our services going forward to kind of help facilitate the implementation of some of these things, that should you choose to do them. We have expertise in all these areas, so we can develop. What you saw was kind of a very high level of you saw the ranges that we had on those estimates. So they're, I don't want to call them crude, but they're with limited information. So the further we develop the systems here to enable some of that improved data collection, we can refine those estimates and even develop sophisticated and very detailed implementation plans for if you implement this solution in this year, that'll save you the most money in the immediate term, and then phasing in as Naomi mentioned, phasing in some of those solutions, we can do more detailed analysis with more data and show you more detailed costs and emissions reductions for those things. So I don't know if I've answered all the aspects of your question, or if there's anything else you'd like to.
You
to know.
have. I'm just curious, what are your backgrounds, the both of you?
Sure. My background is in engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer in industry for 10 years before I started at ERM. At ERM, I've been there for about 4 years, doing mostly greenhouse gas related things. So specifically greenhouse gas inventories and decarbonization and target setting. So kind of all the things related to that. I'll let Naomi.
Yeah,
say.
thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Sure.
My name is Naomi. I'm from Washington, D.C. I've been with ERM for about 3.5 years now. My background is in environmental law and policy and understanding how greenhouse gas accounting and reporting impacts institutions like yours, but we also work with corporate institutions. And so a lot of the work that I do at ERM has to do with decarbonization planning, financial assessments, as well as actual procurement of solutions such as renewable energy. So assessing different contracts with retailers of renewable energy and expanding renewable energy build out on the grid.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks for your work. And at first, when I looked at your first presentations, I thought, yes, it's very high level and crude, but I think we have to look at it that way as a starting point, right? Because that's going to help us then prioritize and be intentional with our investments. So then I really liked what I saw. So thank you. It helps us as a roadmap, I think, right?
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Joel and Vice Chancellor, I think I support a number of things that you were presenting and your world too in terms of infrastructure. I think it's hitting home a very important piece that we need to invest in as we go forward and make plans with our next revenue enhancement kinds of efforts. And so again, very much understand it better from tonight. So keep informing us, keeping us posted, and definitely support those investments next. Quick question on something that we saw on one of the presentations. Is it easy? Is it hard to go after the renewable PG&E, SVCE renewables that kind of, like they said, maintain Sunnyvale, but then enroll De Anza and Foothill? Is that something we could do quickly or not?
I can speak to that. So typically these retailers will have renewable energy programs for buyers that you can subscribe to. I think the lead time right now is 9 months to 1.5 years.
Okay.
So compared to some of these large infrastructure changes, definitely a lot easier to sign up. It doesn't require any changes to your physical infrastructure, but it will require renegotiating your contract, making sure that there is renewables on the grid that's available to you. And then of course, evaluating if you want to take on that additional cost that'll add to your operational electricity spend.
Terry, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Because
on
it's a
that.
follow-up to that.
Of course.
It's my understanding that at least in the past, we contracted with Constellation Energy as a direct, I've forgotten what the technical term is.
Retailer, yeah.
Yeah. But which most large organizations like ours have that option. We don't have to go through either PG&E or a local provider. But the issue of moving to Silicon Valley Green Energy was explicitly raised years ago now. Is there a reason we haven't done it already?
I'm not exactly sure if there's a
I think I'm
Okay.
pointing to
Yeah.
our staff here.
If we use energy from Silicon Valley, very clean energy, but also very expensive, our systems are not optimized now to utilize that clean energy. In other words, some of our systems may not be as efficient. So you're paying good money for systems that are not efficient. If that makes any sense.
No, I'm not sure I understand that.
So it's like putting premium gas on a very old car. So you're paying more or less high octane for a, usually meant for a fine German luxury automobile, let's say. But you're using an old car, but you're not going to get the same benefits if you're putting premium gas on an older car. Does that make sense?
Can I jump in with a follow-up on that? So does the estimate here, it was referring to the switch to Silicon Valley Clean Energy as small cost, high impact. Does that include the cost of making a transition to equipment that can more fully take advantage?
It's
Okay.
purely, if I'm not, it's purely the cost of just buying clean energy.
So there'd be a negative impact on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get the more cost part, because I mean, I'm a Silicon Valley client myself. I pay for the increment to make sure it's all 100% renewable. But whatever, we're going to use electricity.
Yes.
It's either going to be renewable electricity or not renewable electricity. I don't know that, so are you saying that because we don't use electricity efficiently enough, we shouldn't buy the more expensive green renewable?
Until we move on to a more efficient.
But when do we ever get there?
Well,
How do
we're
we ever
slowly
know we're there?
We're slowly going into that. Like as Mike pointed out, we have now a project at Foothill for air source heat pumps to heat our pool. And then we'll continuously look at what other projects where we can have those opportunities. And then we'll look at the time. Is this now the time to buy cleaner, more expensive energy now that we do have more efficient and optimized systems?
Of course, if we're using cleaner, more expensive electricity, that gives us an incentive to use less of it more quickly.
Yes, that is true too.
We'll revisit the conversation and we'll bring it back to the board at a later date in terms of the analysis that we will do, both on the fiscal side and also on the operations side, so that we can recommend to the board which is the best route to go.
Trustee Gavato, do you have others? I see your finger at your microphone.
If there's a plan to come back with a deeper analysis, is that what you're saying of kind of what the cost
Correct.
benefit? Okay, then
particularly for the Silicon Valley Green Energy.
Then
Moving
I'll
to
wait
C-
until then to
Okay.
pepper you
Trustee
guys with more
Casas,
questions.
did you have questions? I see your finger at your mic as well.
So the recommendation to spend 21 million, over $21 million, would that help us use the Silicon Valley Clean Energy or not? Would that set us, or do we have to expend a lot more money?
It's going to give us information on how we proceed next by installing those meters, and it will make us make better decision making.
And is this money, does that include consultants and all these extra fees, or would it?
Well, that 21 million is purely installation of sub-meters in all of our systems, like gas.
Yeah, but do you have to,
electric. We're
in a part, do we need to pay for consultants?
we probably would need to pay for a consultant and a
Okay, so it's a
contractor
lot
to
more.
install those. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So that's purely equipment only
So can I just have
and installation.
a number from the bond measure? We had some money set aside for tech. How much money is left over from that? And how much money of this should we ask from the housing pot? Just to get an idea. I mean, I know it doesn't have to be exact, but approximate.
So if looking at the current slides that we have in front of you, just for the utility submetering and for the infrastructure needs that we need, it's roughly about $29 million that we need in order for us to put this in place. What we presented tonight in terms of putting the submeters, upgrading the technology infrastructure, that I would like to emphasize not only addresses sustainability, but also improves the interconnectivity on the campuses that has an impact directly through instruction and student support services. So it's about $29 million.
29. Okay.
Correct.
And how much of that will be paid for by the bond measure? Because we did have some money set aside in the bond measure for technology, which we already spent a lot of that money. So is there any money left over that? And we're going to take from the housing, I mean, if the board decides, take from the housing, how much money is left from the housing pot?
So our estimate right now, what is left for the housing, I'll answer the second question first. It might be easier. For the employee and student housing earmark project of $200 million, based on our current estimate, we are saving about $30 million from the housing when everything is said and done. So we're still not in the final, we still haven't figured out the exact number to the nearest cent because we're still in the process of getting bids for the renovation for student housing. For employee housing, we're done. We already know the final number, but for the student housing piece, we are not yet there yet because we still have to go out for a bid for the renovation. But in our current estimate, it will save overall. We will be saving about $30 million of the employee and student housing funds that can be used for something else.
Well, but how many claims have already been made on that money? I'm sure there are a lot of bidders.
Yeah, what
That's
is the
correct.
process for prioritizing the other claims on that money?
I don't think there is a current process, if I remember, because I think these are additional requests on top of what was identified in the different pots of money when the board back in 2021 allocated the Measure G bond money.
But if I stopped 10 people on campus, would I get 10 different ideas about how to spend the $30 million?
For good reasons. I think all of us, coming from a perspective of trying to further support students, right? I think all of us are coming all of us are looking at it in the perspective of how we can best serve our students. There's no bad intention whatsoever. It's really trying to figure out with this limited availability of funds that we have, what is the best approach in supporting all of our students.
I have some other questions, but 2 questions. Okay, so back to the $21 million for the metering systems. That's a capital cost for installing.
Correct.
And then what's the ongoing cost for maintenance, and do we need to add personnel because of it?
Actually, it will help us with our limited personnel that we have right now. It will help us focus our energy in terms of determining what the prevailing issues are without going building by building to determine what the issue is, or without going from boiler to boiler to determine what the issue is. Because right now we don't have the infrastructure. And so let us say, for example, if we have an issue with the ATC building, PSEC building. I think I'm talking about a different institution. Sorry. For example, if there's an issue with PSEC, if there are 3 boilers in the building, we have to figure out which boiler needs to be addressed in order for us to fix the issue. Whereas with putting all of this infrastructure in place, we can easily pinpoint boiler number 3 is the issue. And we can direct all of our maintenance technicians to go in that closet where the boiler is, rather than going one by one before we address the issue.
So is it true, or would it be that, so we're metering all the different buildings on campus, and there's some things that we could do remotely, like if the thermostat was
Correct.
wrong, whatever it was there, but there would be some things we can't, like if you have to touch a damper, you can't
That is correct.
do a damper.
That is correct. But we can do it.
Remotely.
But we can do initial analysis, and we can do
We can figure out where the damper is, and
diagnostics
someone's got to go touch it.
remotely. Correct.
Okay. Board members, other questions?
I don't know if my question was answered. How much bond money is left over for technology or infrastructure for this kind of?
Yeah. Excuse me. So for the type of infrastructure that I was talking about, we have just over 11 million that's allocated for those, it's called the Network Service Room Project, but that would also need to support, some of the underground components and those other pieces. So, we're estimating 20.5 million, and we have 11.3 current.
Sounds like the board questions. Any questions from,
Wow.
oh, you have more. Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
First, some general comments. You know, it's been my impression that until now, our sustainability and energy management plans have been big on aspiration and thin on practical application or execution. So, you know, I found this material very encouraging because what I see here is some depth and substance and, you know, even backed up by some very preliminary but real tactical plans for how you actually go about implementing. So all of that is very encouraging. The cost is daunting. And I worry about that. And it leads me to kind of one big question. And that is, I'm all for ambitious goals, but I don't want to engage in magical thinking. And given what we've learned now with this more rigorous analysis, should we revisit our goals? I'm not advocating that we do that. I certainly don't want to back away from them unnecessarily. But if they are totally unrealistic, should we revisit? You don't need to answer that now, but I think that's something we should think about. Second, this is a much smaller point. I did notice that refrigerants are in the analysis, even though there's no target for it. I assume that's because the refrigerants are themselves greenhouse gases. Is that correct? Of course, we know the principal greenhouse gases are all petroleum related. And in that regard, I know we're going to have another session to talk about synthetic surfaces, artificial turf. I'd just like to point out that it's my understanding that from sources that I've read that by 2050, 20% of all oil and gas production will be devoted to producing plastic. And it's also my understanding that more than half of all the plastic ever produced in the world has been produced since 2000.
Wow.
So, and we don't have anything in our plans about plastic. And I'm not saying we should, but it is another sustainability issue. And I think we need to think carefully as we wade into areas where we look at our consumption of plastic. So those are my two points.
If I may, so I think that is a good segue because we are now in the process of developing an RFP for a consultant to help us with the 2027 to 2037 district facilities and sustainability master plan. And so through our governance process, we're going to go through the processes at the Anza College and at Foothill College to come up with one consolidated district facilities and sustainability master plan, which we are intending, if everything aligns, intending to present to the board for approval and adoption in July of 2027. So next July of next year. And hopefully that would address that if we need to revisit the sustainability goals by set by the board for 2035. If we need to push it a little, what is realistic and what is not, all of that will be coming to fruition with the new district facilities and combined district facilities and sustainability plan.
Let me pivot here for a second. Are there questions or comments? This is a study session. I know it looks like a regular board meeting, but it's actually a study session. Is there any questions or comments from the floor? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just to dip back a little bit, what were the relative numbers of chargers on the two campuses? We were talking about EV chargers. It was
42,
Okay,
42.
so they did equal out. Sorry, I missed something. Yep, thank you.
That's the planned number.
When everything's said and done, 42 and 42. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I think we had a question about how the rates were determined for those EV chargers. There was some concern that the rates may be higher than at neighboring chargers, and it may discourage their use as opposed to, let's say, parking at like Target and using their chargers or somewhere else.
Is there someone equipped to answer that question? Oh, look, Joel.
We're not using the chargers to make money from what I understand, because they were here before I am, is you have the base electric rate, but we do pay charge point for some service agreements. So we just tack on just to cover that service agreement on top of whatever kilowatt hour that the electric company charges us.
And do you have any idea about the
I
demand?
think it's about. No, I don't. I'm
I guess
sorry.
utilization.
don't use-
I should say utilization should be my.
Yeah,
Do you have any idea about utilization?
I don't. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
can bring that back.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
That's okay. If you said 100%, I would say you don't have an argument. But okay, great.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to answer while you're asking a question. We look at the charge point stats.
Oh my God, the sky is speaking. Yes.
They're 100% utilized during the day, morning periods and early afternoon, to the point where we're turning away people that want to charge, but we're looking at 75% utilization. The addition of the new chargers will be excellent. As far as the rates, yes, they're pricey, but this is what it costs to put in all the new conduit. It's what it costs to put in new chargers, and then what it costs for the maintenance. I tell everyone that I charge with, you are paying for solar energy charging your electric car, and 39 cents is a bargain in my mind.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the floor or up here on the dais?
Yeah,
Trustee
I have,
Gavatua, you're on.
just a couple of quick questions, one clarifying, one more kind of on next steps. The $30 million figure that you cited, just to try to understand correctly, that's the amount remaining that was earmarked for student and faculty housing, correct? Okay, so that's what's left in the fund. Okay. And so in terms of next steps, because obviously we're talking, as Trustee Landsberger said, about large sums of money, although 20 million is perhaps a small price to pay to stop Jory's staff from getting bitten by venomous spiders. So, when we're talking about some of these kind of intriguing proposals around, electrification, retrofitting, I assume that's going to come back to the board with kind of a more in-depth analysis of what are the costs of each of these proposals, what are the percentage anticipated benefit or progress towards some of our goals, right?
That is correct, because this is a study session. We couldn't ask the board for directions at this point. So yes, we will go back. We will go back to the board at some point to get directions.
Do we have a date estimate on when that will be?
I'm writing it right now, probably about May or June, because by then we would know the more or less the estimated cost for the renovation for the student housing, which will give us the final number for the savings for the housing piece.
And you'll know by then what other hands are open waiting for that $30 million?
I think I already have a list in my pocket right now.
Yeah, I'm just saying I don't want to make the decision in a vacuum.
Correct. Yeah. And to that point, are we assuming that the $30 million that was allocated for that is now up for grabs or will be going to other uses? Is that just kind of an assumption that we're moving forward with here?
It depends on how you interpret it, but what I would say is if we follow the direction that the board gave back in 2024, wherein the board has purview to reallocate that money, savings from housing, from the housing funds for infrastructure, then it kind of defined already where the direction should be. But of course, we want to go back again to the board to make sure that you are giving us clear directions.
And I believe Trustee Landsberger wanted to share something.
Well, I have a vivid recollection of the meeting.
Yes,
And it was
some of us who weren't here.
President Woodbury who said that with respect to the proposal advocated by Trustee Aarons at the time was to give the money to De Anza for the art facility, and I was opposed to that, and President Woodbury pointed out that clearly the board had changed its mind, and I found that analysis persuasive. And I agreed to switch over to support the suggestion, the original motion by trustee Aaron's, with the stipulation, and it's in the motion, that the board could change its mind on that $200 million if not all of it was needed, because in particular, infrastructure was taking a hit, including with that motion. So the board did not say that it would be devoted, anything left over would be devoted to infrastructure, but that was clearly part of the thinking. So, we've addressed that issue as a board in that to that extent in the past.
Thank you for that history. Anything else? Thank you to all of you who came and presented and did all the gazillions of hours of work it took to make it happen. Thank you. All right. On to our second topic. Let's see, it is, I'm doing a little time check here. It's 10 minutes to 7. Do we want a little break, team? Do you want a break? Yes. 10 minutes? Do you want a 10-minute break? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. me try that again. All right, we are topic number 2 for the evening. We're going to talk about the climate survey. Thank you very much for the materials in advance.
Hello, thank you so
Hello.
much. Hi, I'm Gohar Momjian, Vice Chancellor for Strategy, Institutional Effectiveness, and Engagement. Appreciate the opportunity to present on this topic today with Dr. Mallory Newell, our Interim Executive Director for Institutional Research and Planning. I want to thank also Dr. David Ulate and Dr. Anu Khanna for their leadership, as well for the administration of the survey, along with, of course, Dr. Newell and Dr. Elaine Kuo for the administration. Also thanking all the leadership groups for encouraging their members to participate in the survey in the time when it was being administered. The climate survey was our initial strategy to assess and measure campus climate as the district rolled out with its vision to become an employer of choice. So of course, measuring areas such as belonging, engagement, and leadership effectiveness. It was administered in May, June of 2025. The results were received and initial analysis began in August and September. In your packet, you'll have some handouts there. You've got some reflection questions. So as Dr. Newell conducts her presentation, you can certainly take notes on that. We've also got 2 infographics there, one for Foothill College and one for De Anza College. So you can see that the colleges have directly engaged and reflected on this data. We've got disaggregated data by employees working at De Anza College, Foothill College, and Central Services. Again, disaggregated by employment type, administrators, faculty, and staff. District-wide, we also have reflected on the data, and the details are all on our website that was included on the agenda item, and shared district-wide results with the executive leadership team back in August, all administrators meeting. At the Chancellor's Advisory Council, 2 times we had presentations on the climate survey. And now we're beginning to move from reflection into a little bit of action, and keeping in mind that the findings represent a small proportion of our employees and is reflective of a snapshot in time when it was administered last year. So today at the board level, our intent is really to raise and elevate the conversation, looking at the data thematically, reminding ourselves about the vision for the Foothill-De Anza Community College District in becoming a nationally recognized employer of choice. And as we look at the climate survey results, and as we think about becoming an employer of choice, we need to think about what does that mean? And Dr. Newell will present the findings in these 6 thematic areas that are related to the Forbes model of choice, employer of choice model. Also, just as it was spoken to at the sustainability topic, today also we're going to be leaning into these foundational practices. These serve as the enablers of our work to accomplish our priorities and goals within the district. And these foundational practices also influence and impact becoming an employer of choice. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Newell to share the results of the survey and begin our conversation with you. Thank you so much. Move this down and it flips.
Great, thank you. So focusing in on the district mission and focusing on the employer of choice model. First off, what is the employer of choice model? So many of you might have heard of it. It's the Forbes employer of choice model. And what's particularly intriguing about the model is it really puts people first in an organization and also allows the mission to drive the work. So it's really key to the district's foundational principles. It also aligns and values employee feedback and foster employee engagement and retention. So this climate survey is one way to gather employee feedback and the many pseudo focus groups we've done across both the campuses and through the district serve as other ways to gather feedback as we've been sharing the results. It also provides a framework to intentionally move towards being that employer of choice, which is one of the intentions of the district, and provides signals that inform responsible stewardship and continuous improvement. So as we move through some of the high-level results, we're going to overlay the employer of choice model, the 6 strategies within the model with our campus climate survey results. And then we're going to provide opportunity for reflection. So just a quick campus climate overview. You've seen the results in the past, but just a reminder, it was the inaugural survey implemented in spring at both campuses and at the district office. We implemented it to all employee groups as well as to students. So there was a student and employee survey. The district, FHDA, was instrumental in the development of the survey statewide. 3 years ago, we served on the team that developed the survey questions with a statewide work group. And then we were the first district to pilot it in a small pilot the prior year. And then we implemented the full survey last year. A quarter of all of our employees participated in the survey across the whole district, 258 complete responses. And by employee classification, we had over half of our administrators participate, about half of our non-instructional faculty, a third of our classified employees, a quarter of full-time employees, but just 8% of our part-time faculty participated. Most respondents indicated they worked a hybrid schedule. And then we found that long-term employees participated the most. So when we look at the breakdown and how long employees have been at the district, and we look at less than 10 years and more than 10 years, it's a pretty even split. But we have slightly higher representation in the survey of those who've been here longer. And that's interesting because we see that positive climate ratings tend to decline the longer you've been at the district. And then the other finding that we found across the board is that the further you are from the decision makers or from your department, your ratings decline. So for example, I may find my department to be doing a great job around climate, but as I get further away to my college, the college leaders and the district leaders, my approval rating is going to decline. And we saw that across the employee categories. So keeping those broad overall findings in mind, we're going to go ahead and move to the 6 strategies. And I'm going to overlay the strategy with the climate survey results, and then you'll have the reflection questions in front of you if you want to take any notes that we can then engage in conversation when we open it up for discussion. So the first of 6 strategies in the employer of choice model is holistic well-being and support. And that strategy includes comprehensive well-being programs such as mental health support, physical well-being, and personalized benefits, as well as a strong emphasis on work-life integration. So offering flexibility, hybrid work, compressed work weeks, and sabbaticals or professional development leaves, as we call them in the district. When we look at the climate survey around the question focusing on well-being, we see that about half of the respondents feel that the district prioritizes the well-being of employees. So in reflection here, how can board policy, budget, and goals more visibly position employee well-being as foundational to student success and institutional sustainability? The second strategy is a purpose-driven culture. And that really focuses on aligning our mission with employee needs. So clearly defining and communicating our values and a North Star that serves to guide our mission and our vision that are both inspires all employees across the board. Also focusing on deepening connection with employees. So connecting with their hearts and their souls by showing them how their work impacts the organization and students. So really inspiring them to feel connected in the daily work that they do. When we look at the climate survey, at the time we added a question to the survey to get feedback on the chancellor's vision, which was new at the time. And when we added that question around knowledge about the chancellor's vision, 1/5 of respondents indicated they were aware of it at the time. And so the reflection here is, what role should the board play in reinforcing a clear North Star, ensuring alignment between strategy, messaging, and daily practice? The third strategy of the employer of choice model is empowerment and career growth. And that includes active career development, such as providing clear career paths, mentorship, and professional development opportunities for all employees, as well as radical authenticity and empowerment. So employee voices are the core of shaping decisions. And we also encourage innovation and allow employees to take ownership of decisions. When we look at career advancement within the climate survey, 1/3 of respondents feel there are opportunities for career advancement. So the reflection here is around how can the board support policies or resource strategies to expand professional growth and leadership pathways when traditional advancement is limited. And so what does that look like for different employment groups across the district? The fourth strategy is transparent and ethical leadership, and that includes radical transparency that often involves open communication, even when we are facing challenges or negative news, all in order to build trust, as well as a culture of high integrity where we ensure fairness in pay, promoting equal opportunity, and acting on employee feedback. They also provide the example of stay interviews where you're interviewing employees during their tenure of being an employee, not just when they're leaving. When we look at the climate survey around transparency, we found that over half of respondents agree that departmental leaders operate transparently. 1/3 of respondents believe college leaders operate transparently, and 1/4 believe district representatives operate transparently. So remember how I was saying that the further away they get from their nucleus, their satisfaction or climate rating goes down. So in reflection here, what governance practices or accountability structures should the board strengthen to deepen institutional trust? And the fifth strategy is around recognition and belonging. And this is really around developing a culture of appreciation. And so celebrating the large and the small wins for all employees through formal recognition and heartfelt shout outs. And then also creating a culture of inclusivity and community where we cultivate diverse and inclusive environments where everyone feels that they can belong. So when we look at that core question around sense of belonging in the survey, we see that over half of the respondents feel a sense of belonging. And we find that newer employees report a higher rate of belonging more than seasoned employees. So the longer you've been here, your sense of belonging tends to decline. So reflecting here, what policy level signals could reinforce belonging and sustained engagement, especially among long tenured employees? And the sixth and final strategy of the employer of choice model is intentional employee experience and retention. And this includes a seamless employee journey, which ensures a red carpet experience from recruitment to onboarding through their daily work, as well as leading with empathy across all levels of leaders. So fostering a supportive environment where leaders are approachable and prioritize mental health and well-being. And then when we look at the climate survey around employee retention, about half of the respondents indicate that the district is effective in implementing equitable employee retention efforts. So reflecting here, how can the board ensure consistent, equitable retention strategies, and how should progress be measured over time?
We wanted to share with you before we get into the conversation and the reflection questions with you, how we've similarly brought forward these results and these types of questions to our governance group. So most recently at the college, at the Chancellor's Advisory Council, we asked these questions. We went into breakout groups and we asked our participants to get their ideas and opinions. So thinking about holistic well-being and support, not shying away from what the data is there, but what is expected? What does this mean to you? What are some ideas or suggestions that you have? And really looking for authentic engagement on these questions. And I thought it was very impactful and powerful listening to what that feedback was that we were getting. So for example, on recognition and belonging, how can we more intentionally create community to improve belonging? in that space, there was a member who was speaking with, well, you know, that question, there's generation gaps, how we used to increase and have this sense of belonging really was different 10, 15 years ago, because we were all on campus, present, seeing each other, being with each other, and able to quickly make those connections. And now in this new normal, where we're in, say, hybrid environment or potentially online only, what are the opportunities we have to create a sense of belonging in that environment? So we were getting those kinds of real conversations and feedback to dig into what we can do. When we were looking at empowerment and career growth, there was the idea of how there are other opportunities that could be created, not just moving from one position being promoted to another, but where can we create opportunities for employees to feel that they're stretching their skills, learning new things, and positioning themselves for when other opportunities arise. So we have this very reflective and authentic conversation to try to get further feedback.
Can I add one more? So one of particular interest that I just wanted to point out around transparent and ethical leadership, attendee appreciated how the chancellor has the monthly newsletter, but they also made the suggestion of the chancellor providing information in alternate formats and suggested potentially a podcast from the chancellor, which I think could be an opportunity there.
Yeah, so again, just really asking ourselves, what does this mean? What does this mean depending on what position you're playing and what your role is at the college as you look at this data? And quite frankly, it's been, it's not easy looking at all this data. It's not, all glowing rainbows and unicorns. We want to keep it in context. Again, there was a small proportion of respondents. Again, how those respondents, how they comprise a certain proportion of what the population is. It's a snapshot in time from last year, but nevertheless, there is some good data in there, and asking the questions, we can get feedback for continuous improvement as we reflect on how we can become an employer of choice in this model. So with that, again, we're trying to elevate the conversations and to engage you. We want to get your thoughts and questions on some of these topics. And we can run through the questions and just spend maybe 5 minutes on each one, a little bit of conversation. The first question having to do with holistic well-being. And given that only half of respondents feel employee well-being is prioritized, how can board policy, budget, and goals more visibly position employee well-being as foundational to student success and institutional sustainability? And they're not, we're trying not to make them rhetorical questions, but real questions. It might raise more questions for you, but we want to open this up for dialogue.
Might we open it up for questions on what you've presented to date, and then move to these questions? Would that be all right? Board colleagues, do you have questions? Yeah, Trustee Casas.
So this climate survey has been taken throughout the state of California, right? In other colleges, the same exact one? Is that correct? So I guess looking at the responses, we're only,
Not all colleges, but
well,
some colleges,
like,
yes.
like a good portion of the colleges, like 25% or
Yeah, I would say 15.
50? Oh, okay.
15, 1-5.
All right. Well, I guess one disappointment I had is the complete responses are only 258 people. And I'm wondering how do we compare to percentage-wise to other colleges in the response ability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this was the first year that the survey was administered, and the RP group is the one that has administered the survey. And they are just now providing that information from the colleges that purchases. So we don't have that information yet, but as the survey continues year after year and they get more participants, then we'll have that information. So that's a great question.
Although I'd speculate that that low participation number is itself an indication that we are not yet an employer of choice. Because if we were, people would want to offer their opinion.
That's right.
Other questions? Do you have other questions, Trustee Casas?
No.
So I'm a newbie, although I guess I've been here a year. And I'm wondering what department looks at this? Like, do we have an HR research department? Do we have industrial and organizational psychologists who do this with us and help us understand how you get to these things? And so, I worked in one of those departments at Intel for years. I was the HR research manager. And we relied on our IO psychs to help us understand how to answer the questions on the reflections, like how people feel engaged, what are the kinds of things that lead to that kind of engagement, things like that. So I'm wondering how that, I know you've talked to leadership and you've shared the results in order to generate some responses and some ideas. But I'm wondering, on the professional side, what kind of professionals have looked at this?
That would be us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. And tell me more about the two of you and how this fits with what you.
Well, it was conducted before I came on board by Dr. David Ulate and Anu Hana. And again, it was coming out of, let's create baseline. We don't have any baseline. So this is the first time we're going out with the survey, creating some baseline information. The department is the institutional research and planning department. Again, working with the RP group, I believe they looked at a few different survey options and decided to go with this particular one so that we could answer some of those questions that you were saying as they roll out statewide to see how we compare to other colleges and also to establish a benchmark for ourselves. And then each of the colleges have reflected within their governance councils on these survey results and spent time with them. As we did with the all administrators. So I've been leading some of those conversations and now with Dr. Newell as well at Chancellor's Advisory Council. So when we're talking about transparency and leadership, what does that mean for this body and taking it through different committees to reflect and get ideas.
Would you remind me what RP stands for?
It's the Research and Planning Group.
Okay, planning.
Yeah, it's a professional organization that's part of the California Community Colleges.
So I don't mean to be pushing back in any way, honestly, because I know we spent a lot of time trying to think through this. There are ways in which these kinds of issues get addressed, right? Like, let's say, there's a strong engagement factor for folks who understand what they're doing day to day and how it affects the overall mission of the organization, right? Like there are ways that those things happen. You have goals that waterfall down to people, or you have there are processes for making those things work. And I just want to make sure that we have the resources that help us understand how to scratch the itch that's been presented. Is that in your team?
We're going to be working along with Dr. Diana Rose, and certainly after a little bit of conversation, we can share with you some of the intentional ongoing work that we're doing so that we are looking at the findings and appropriately putting them into buckets as we look at what kind of leadership development and professional development that we're doing, for example, or how we can increase our communication channels. So there is some ongoing work that's taking place. And some of that I see within my role in a new role and working and collaborating with my partners in human resources, as well as college-wide across with our constituent leaders, because I would say personally that I don't believe that it's only one department, that we all must take ownership of this in order to progress. It's part of building culture.
Oh, I absolutely agree that we all have to own it. And starting with reflection questions for a board is fine, but we're not experts at this. But ownership is absolutely distributed across the both colleges and across the district. I just want to make sure we have access to the expertise on how to make those things happen, right? Like there's leadership council, there's other places in which that kind of HR survey work results in, like, this is what other people have done and this is a way to do it and that sort of thing. So I'm just putting that out there. Again, not at all pushing back on you, just having had great resources to do this in the past, I know it helps. Okay, so I've interrupted you long enough. Other questions? Trustee Gavatwa.
One thing that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to flag, it said the participation rate among part-time faculty was 8%, right? I'm curious how that compares to past surveys that we've done. I don't know if we know kind of what the engagement rate from part-time faculty has been in the past, or.
So this isn't an inaugural survey. We actually haven't done a
Oh, this is,
climate
I'm sorry,
survey
this is the
in
very
in
first
a
one.
very long time. So this is really like
Okay.
benchmarking for us, for very much so. But
Okay.
yeah, great question.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, part-time faculty is, correct me if I'm wrong, something like a little under 2/3 of the total faculty across both campuses, right? So, and I am part-time faculty, so I know this is often a population that's hard to engage in these kinds of things, right? But it's an important one to engage, especially if we're trying to get a sense of, how do our staff, how do our faculty feel, given this is such a large population and also such a hard to engage population. So one thing I'll be curious about, coming out of this, and again, this is a bigger picture question, but is, moving forward, how will we try to better engage our part-time faculty so that we know, what are the concerns that are top of mind for them? Because they're probably going to be different. They may not be the same, and I would imagine probably are not the same as full-time faculty as other staff. And I see our faculty association head is raising his hand, so I'll defer to him on that.
Well, I think just looking at the working conditions for part-time faculty, not all of them, but probably a majority of them have to work at 2, 3, even 4 institutions just to patch a living together. Some of these criteria here don't even appear on the radar for a part-time faculty retention. A lot of them would love to have full-time jobs. I know I worked as an adjunct for 8 years before I finally landed one. And I think the opportunities for growth are non-existent. The pay is lower, the benefits are less. And a lot of that is structural on the state level. But it has to be addressed both locally and on the state level. And I think we've done some good things in moving in that direction, such as health benefits for part-time faculty. That was huge for those who participated in it. There are other things we've toyed around with in the past. Professional development leave for part-time faculty. I'm not sure how that would work if you're working at 4 institutions, but I know it makes a real difference when you have a chance to stand back and reflect on your work and your goals, and so forth.
Well,
Trustee Casas.
sort of a question and a reflection. So in looking at the website and all the different surveys that were taken, and it just seemed to me that the higher you were in leadership and administration, the more satisfied you were. And then I don't want to say lower, but if you looked at part-time faculty and also classified, the satisfaction, or at least the response to complaints or opportunities was much lower. And that was very interesting to me, and something, we have to work on, because like what was said, we have such a huge population as part-time faculty, but also if you come to all the graduations and see our student success, it's a lot of the classified that was supportive of their student success. So we got to pay attention and really appreciate that sector of our employee group. So not really a question.
Great point. Thank you.
Okay, we've taken you off task. Sorry, let's put you back on task. Tell us what you want.
Well, the task is truly yours in terms of what thoughts you want to share with us. As I think about, only 1/5 were familiar with the vision. And that vision emanates from the board to the chancellor and on down. So we are all thinking about how we can continue to reinforce that. And I can't speak on your behalf. So, what ideas you might have in terms of reinforcing what that vision and mission is. I would say even tonight's discussion on sustainability, how is the district's priorities and its vision informing your decision-making? How could we make that more transparent? Thinking along those lines.
The list that's in front of us, given their low response rate and the length of the list in front of us to tackle, many of those things are overlapping. And so one option might be to pick the place that we feel like we could make some progress. Like, for example, maybe number 4, where we dig a little deeper into some of the data and try and figure out how we can do a few things to work on that, and then be very visible about it, and then report on it a lot, and then spend the next bit of time trying to figure out why response rate wasn't what we wanted and how we can have more response rate so that we're not chasing things that we shouldn't be chasing because we don't have enough a significant response. Would be maybe one way I might tackle it, like 1 or 2 things that we feel like, anecdotally over the years, we know this has been a problem, and let's go work on a couple of things, and then be very visible about what we're going to do and how often the board will ask about it. Like, I would say from my perspective, I'm not speaking on behalf of my colleagues, I would want like every other month, what's happened in that space and what are we doing differently? How are we addressing this? But not for a list of like, 6, 10, 12 things, but just a couple. And then one of those things would be getting response rate to be something that gives us a significant answer that we can actually dive deeper the next year. That would be one way I might tackle it.
I think that's a great idea. I know, again, in the area that I'm responsible for with Dr. Newell, we've talked about transparency and accountability related to our student goals. So I don't know when the last time was that you've had reports on student outcomes. I've certainly seen the plans that have been brought forth by your presidents in getting those plans approved. And we've been talking, well, when do we bring forward to the board? We were brainstorming perhaps in early fall, for example, the data on the student outcomes, how we're progressing in those plans. And that's a way to increase both accountability and transparency. And it's encouraging your role at the policy level and holding us accountable to the work that we need to do. So those are the ways that we're thinking about it. But I love your idea of just tackling 1 or 2 areas potentially, and letting us know again how we can support your efforts as we continue to address some of these topics. I'll share with you again, we're not just looking at the data and asking questions. There is intentional ongoing work, again, connected with the foundational practices as we think about empowered governance and institutional agility that has an influence over the transparent and ethical leadership concept. So simple actions like posting agendas, posting minutes, getting the agendas out on time, encouraging everyone to speak at a governance meeting. Those are things that we are intentionally making efforts to, again, increase engagement. The strategic finance and talent innovation. I know with Dr. Rose, we've been talking about, what are the kinds of professional development opportunities and leadership opportunities that we can make available to employees so that they can grow in their positions, formal and informal. In our Chancellor's Advisory Council, again, there were comments like sometimes there are these opportunities where you can work out of class, or there might be an interim. Don't be afraid to take those. You can go back to your position. That kind of encouraging, communicating with your manager that you are interested in something else or something more. These are the conversations that we're engaged in. Increasing, a lot of it is sometimes communication. So we're very much focused on communications within our governance councils, as well as thinking about how we communicate information about what's going on. People in their departments or the administrators, they know what's going on, but if that's not trickling out, we need to communicate more. And nowadays, what does that mean? Sending out 20-page newsletters? Maybe not so much, but like the suggestion we received at the council, little short podcast, video, that there's other ways that we can also communicate consistently to get the message out. And certainly we know that as we've established this benchmark, baseline, inaugural climate survey, we have more questions to ask because, as you mentioned, Trustee Godfrey, we don't want to just assume that if we do this, then this is going to improve. We need to ask people within their positions, the different constituent groups, what their ideas are. What does a sense of belonging mean to you? What would you seek in order to improve, and to ask them? So we are looking at conducting some focus groups this spring to get a little bit more information. We were talking about focusing particularly on the faculty because there weren't as many respondents in specific classified groups, part-time faculty. So doing some focus groups. We're also planning to do a pulse survey. So a very short survey focused perhaps on the Gallup points. Again, it all connects to the same topics because the survey was conducted in a moment in time last year in the spring, and we can do a pulse survey and see where folks are feeling in this moment now in time. And then we've committed to implementing the full survey again in spring 2027. So that way we can build on our progress.
Yes, Trustee Landsberg.
I think it's very good that this is a focus, and I'm pleased that you're tackling it in a very thoughtful way. I have to confess, reviewing this list of reflection questions gives me a huge amount of test anxiety. And in part, it's because maybe this is associated with the conclusion or the observation that the farther you get away from your local position, the ratings get worse. From the board's perspective, the farther you get away from the actual doing of the work, the more difficult it is for us to figure out what our role and how we can contribute. For me, it comes down to basically two things: our relationship with and expectation of the chancellor and the presidents. We can be real clear and consistent about that. And one of the things is, congratulations, you're paying attention to this sort of thing, and we want you to keep doing it. So that's one. And then resource allocation. So, which it's not so easy for us to actually shine in respect to handling that function, because I could ask you right now, you want $30 million for professional development? Right. We just had the earlier conversation where that $30 million is already being, so, it's kind of no win. And some of it is inherent in the size of our organization. So it's going to take some sophistication. I mean, I wasn't here in the 60s, but I actually worked with people who were here. It was one college, Foothill College. They all lived locally. They, as I understand it, every Friday afternoon, they'd go either to a home or to a bar, and they'd have drinks, and they'd gossip about who's having an affair with whom. And I mean, you know, that was a community. It's harder to do that when you're the size we are now. So, and if you do some of these things inauthentically, like recognition, if that's just a routine, and it's actually, for me, it turned me off, and I suspect that others feel that way. So, you know, this is complicated, and I'm very glad somebody will be paying attention to it. Come back to us when you think we can be helpful, but please recognize you're going to stress us out when you ask us these questions over and over.
Vice Chancellor Rose, I see you came off mute.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to obviously defer. So your suggestion, for example, President Godfrey, is what we had approached within human resources. So, you know, given the reputation that HR had before I got here, one of the things that I did almost immediately was engage an external company to do an HR customer satisfaction survey, just like Vice Chancellor Momji just recognized we needed a baseline, right? So yeah, how do we know if we're really improving? What came back was we had 5 what they called pinch point areas, and McLean, the group that administered the survey, said, but pick 3. Because if you try to tackle all 5, you're not going to get any of them done. So among the group, all of the HR staff, of the 5, the 3 that were chosen was onboarding, training and development, and communication. And so each one of the managers is leading a cross-functional team on that. So I think with this is a great start, but until you dig down into the data, we don't really know. So what is this really telling us, right? So it's just scratching the surface, and those are some of the things that we'll be working on. And then I think we'll better be able to bring back some suggestions or recommendations on, you know, of these what I call pinch points. You know, maybe these are some of the ones that we're recommending to focus on, so that we can actually get something done, something measurable within the year's time.
Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that you did it in that department. Questions or comments from the floor? Other questions for us that we can't answer? Because we've proven that we're not that great at answering the ones you asked.
We just wanted to bring this to you. We're working through the results and the data. The colleges have had conversations. I mean, I think across the board, we're just trying to work through it, to understand it, and to take action on it as we learn more to improve the results over time as we build this culture.
That's and building the culture is so important. You know, having this come to a board study session and knowing that we're going to look at it multiple times between now and next year, and we do it again, is a huge step. I think I saw a finger up. Barry? No. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Okay. That was our second topic for the evening. Unless there's any other questions or comments, we are adjourned.